Hello and welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode we started a new war with the Pueblo nations as Ustra went campaigning to try and secure more territory for the West India Company. In Europe, Voss was rampaging through Ottoman lands, pushing on to take several settlements, starting off here in Bosnia where the enemy simply surrendered before our advance. The Pueblo nations gathered up an army and sallied out to face Ustra as he tried to besiege them. The battle was unusually hard and the natives were able to destroy the majority of Ustra's army and kill Ustra himself. However, after a bloody brawl, the Dutch came out on top. Voss pushed out of Bosnia and continued on into Bulgaria, where once again he faced only a tiny Ottoman force and was able to convince them to simply surrender, our territory there in the Balkans expanding very rapidly. At the same time, Gaiden got involved and took Athens from the Ottomans, further securing our expansion in that area and leaving Istanbul as the next target. And then right at the end in India, we started an invasion finally of the main continent with our General Kasta leading the attack on Mysore. If the scouts can be trusted, then the Indians will arrive before we finish gathering our supplies. We will very likely meet them somewhere around here soon. I hope you're all ready and understand what that means. You need to keep the men under control if any fighting starts. We want to be as calm as possible and not fight the enemy if we don't have to. Not that we would struggle to fight, of course. I say this only because our morale has been low ever since we set out, and unless you can tell me otherwise, I think our men would probably appreciate a lighter hand. Don't you think? What we don't want is for them to bloody defect to the enemy when they see how many of them there are. And there's a lot of them. I hope you all appreciate that. Between the army groups we've identified, they've outnumbered us by quite a staggering margin. But haven't the greatest things in history been done under such circumstances? But perhaps that is a little consolation. Well, if you struggle to stop it from getting to you, do feel welcome to join me in my tent. I've brought quite the fine drinks cabinet along with us. In fact, why don't we all share a glass now, eh? This is a rather shaky business to be conducting with such sharp heads. A toast to our expedition. Let the enemy's numbers evaporate in this devilish sun, and let this all be over without undue chaos. Outside of my tent, that is. Drink up then. So yes, the invasion of India has begun and it's time to size up our opponents here. First, the fleet that brought the men over can go and raid some Ottoman trade that happens to be coming out of the Maratha Confederacy. Hopefully the Maratha won't be too annoyed about that because we do need them to not attack us during this invasion of Mysore. So you can see they've got a small army right next to our landing zone and then 1.5 stacks in their city. So they're definitely going to outnumber us, but I'm hoping that their troops will be inferior to ours man for man, so we'll be able to overcome them. I'm going to use our Minister Grezdag to have a little look into their territory. Not much to see, just a imam preaching some Islam, so that's going to be inconvenient for us, but we are going to try and spread Protestantism if we can. Now, for some reason, Morocco decides to declare war on me. I think it's because they're a protectorate of Dagestan, and Mysore is also a protectorate of Dagestan, so that link has caused them to be tipped over the edge of their dislike for me. So we are now at war with Morocco. This is dangerous because we have no forces left, really, in Western Europe, but luckily they don't actually make an attack right away, so we'll have time to prepare. And now a Mysore stack appears. If you were watching very closely, you would have seen that that stack actually came out of hiding from the forest. This isn't the stack from the town, so they actually had 2.5 stacks defending their city, and now that we know that, our strategic assessment of the situation becomes a little bit different. It seems that Costa here is in trouble, but first, before we deal with their greater numbers, we have to deal with this initial battle. The enemy do have the advantage and have a lot of different kinds of units. Lots and lots of it cavalry, loads of light cavalry, so we'll need to watch out for their charges, and I'm hoping their line infantry will be inferior to our own, who are mostly these VOC infantry Indian trained units, who are basically line infantry with very similar stats. We've also got these cuirassiers, who are a heavy cavalry unit. The first time I'm using these in the campaign, they're going to be sitting on our right flank. So I've just formed up in a line. One part of the line has a wall for cover, so that should help in a shootout, and we've got 2 units of company cavalry in reserve reserve, a lighter cavalry unit roughly similar to the regiment of horse or provincial cavalry used in Europe. So the enemy's army, to start with, is in a giant mess. They reformed right away. Their cavalry coming out in front there. They've got lots of these colourful line infantry. They don't look particularly powerful. I think they're slightly inferior to our own, but they have lots of numbers in each regiment, so they're quite good at charging. Back here they've got elephants. Their generals do ride elephants. They're also a gun unit, so they can shoot over the top of the units in front of them, which makes them quite useful. And they've got several specialist units, including these tiger grenadiers. They've also got some berserker units, which we'll see later on. So the enemy's starting strategy was to take their massive amount of light cavalry and bring them over to attack my right flank by the looks of things. They're coming in a column formation, meaning it's going to be extra easy to hold them off, but they just have so many light cavalry that might actually cause an issue just in terms of it not being possible to kill them. So obviously here we've got our heavy cavalry and our infantry, who are going to be fairly effective against those lighter cavalry units. So as the enemy come in, we're going to start hitting them with volleys at maximum range. Not really going to do anything, but I'm hoping the enemy's low morale will mean they're easier to rout even without causing too many casualties. And now as they get close, the cuirassiers will charge in for a heavy cavalry engagement. This enemy unit is a lancer unit, meaning it has a better charge bonus, but it doesn't seem to do anything. My men go in fine and immediately start inflicting casualties on the enemy. We are going to win that engagement. Another engagement here, the enemy's sword cav, they're definitely going to lose against these heavy cavalry just rushing in against them. So that's going to be easy enough. The first two units can be dealt with. My nearby infantry are going to form squares because the enemy's cav started attacking them as well, so that should help hold the enemy off. But now more and more cavalry pouring in. This is where their numbers are going to start giving them an advantage. They can attack so many units from so many sides. These cavalry are kind of stopped by the square, but not really. They partially break through and half the square seems to be damaged, but the formation does hold on, continuing to get their bonus against cavalry, so we'll just see how that goes. Now these cuirassiers out here have almost defeated those lancers, but more and more enemy troops coming in means they can't catch a break here. They're bringing in horse archers for a close range volley, then they draw their swords and fight in melee. Those guys are armoured, so I assume they're okay in melee, but being a missile unit, they shouldn't have the highest stats. They've even got reserve cavalry still not deployed, so overall, it seems they're just going to try and overwhelm this flank by pushing men into a meat grinder. I tried to clear things up a little bit using a bayonet charge from this unit of unengaged infantry right into the rear flank of this cavalry unit. It didn't seem to do all that much damage. I'd hoped that the charge might kill some of these lighter cav, but it didn't do very much, and they're just going to wander off and get out of the way. The square next door has totally broken down, so now it's just an open melee with their cav. My cuirassiers are coming in to support slightly more closely now, but the enemy have done a really good amount of damage to my line infantry, so they're kind of doing the job, but really now they're going to be overwhelmed by the fact that our men are just better. So slowly but surely we do manage to finish off the majority of this light cavalry, with some of them escaping away, so that's an okay start.
For years I have seen this vision, a host of invaders under European flags, come to continue what those underhanded Portuguese have started. They look at Mysore and they see a city of slaves for the amoral merchants. They think so low of us that they send but a handful of children to bring us to our knees. Well, my noble brothers in arms, today is the day I have spoken of many times. Today is the moment when the destiny of our people falls into your hands. If but a fraction of you can kill a foreign heretic, then the darkness these Dutchmen bring will fall like so many others before it. Suffer no flag to fly but ours, no soul to breathe but ours, no people to rule my soul but ours.
Now further along the line, the main fight looks like it's about to get started. Here, the enemy's holy men charging in. This is the berserker unit I mentioned, very high melee stats and high morale. Right now not being used terribly effectively because they're running horizontally along the line, taking fire the more time they waste. I'm also setting up cavalry on my left flank, where we're going to have the enemy generally outflanked. These are my Indian cavalry, native lancers similar to what the enemy are using, so we're hoping to inflict some charges upon these line infantry who won't be terribly strong against such attacks. So the holy men finally make a decision about what they're going to do and start actually getting close to the line. Here I've got grenadiers, a line infantry unit that's more powerful than usual line infantry in melee, so that would be a nice point for the enemy to attack, but they're actually running away again, so who knows what they're trying to do with them. So that lancer charge is now going to happen. The enemy just about launching off some volleys before we impact, but it's not going to make a big difference. 2 units charging in, the enemy's number's going to drop quickly. They lose 100 men in a matter of seconds. Their morale will start dropping rapidly as well as a result of that damage. So let's jump right back over to the other side of the field where we've sort of cleaned up everything. The enemy still has horse archers firing into our cavalry here. My guy's doing nothing because I need to micro a bit better and get them going. So here they are going to engage with those horse archers. We've pretty much cleared everything up, but massive damage to these units over here, especially the cuirassiers, the heavy cavalry, losing virtually all of them in those engagements earlier on. So some line battles beginning to break out here in the center. I'm happy with that because I've got my wall here to protect my troops. My troops not necessarily firing back, but well, what can you expect? So I don't know why they're not firing. Perhaps they're somehow out of range or something. Further on, the enemy have decided to forgo the line battle and have just charged in, and that might just go to their advantage. You can see they have so many numbers in their regiments that they're just overwhelming my men. Nearby, my grenadiers not really helping. Again, they're not firing for whatever reason. They are theoretically on fire at will, but I guess it just doesn't always work. My lancer attack on those infantry has been successful, but right behind the lancers, things are getting dodgy. The enemy's reinforcements are actually coming on the flank. So as those cavalry who we defeated at the beginning flee off the field, more and more support units are showing up right on my flank. So they've got horse archers, they've got elephants, and some miscellaneous infantry coming in as well. Luckily, my lancers are sort of out of the way now because they chased off the routing enemies, but the main line could be in trouble. I formed an echelon to fire at these reinforcements, so these Vok infantry are going to try and bring down the elephants, and we're actually successful in killing the leader of that elephant brigade, which was the general of their reinforcements, so that's fantastic. The elephants, of course, while they're just floundering here, going to be pretty vulnerable to fire, pretty easy to hit compared to other units, so we'll try and hold them off. Unfortunately, in the centre, the enemy's melee attack has been pretty successful. They're breaking through here. Our unit's starting to rout. We actually killed their main general by random chance. I was just firing cannons at him because he was sitting at the back of the map, and we did manage to bring him down. So the enemy is going to take a morale shock from that. That's definitely going to help out, considering they're starting to gain an upper hand in the centre. Their grenadiers here are really struggling because I'm just dancing around them with the lancers, and finally I managed to get a lancer charge into them without taking a volley. So those grenadiers are going to go down pretty fast. They don't look particularly armoured, so a lance pretty sure to go right through them. So we'll finish them off there. In the centre, we're actually starting to see enemy routes now, which is fantastic. Surely something to do with the loss of their general, because they were doing pretty well in the actual fight. So we're going to start reforming. Our position on the wall here still looking relatively strong. Further along, though, where the enemy's attacking with higher morale swordsmen, that's still going fine for the enemy, just hacking through our men. This unit here trying to defend this position, almost defeated, but suddenly the arrival of the company cavalry, my reserve unit, is going to start clearing things up. They come in for a massive rear attack on this position, hitting the enemy's line infantry and their swordsmen, and then going to inflict big damage and of course an important morale shock there, with more infantry pouring in from the right flank. Now that that's been won against the enemy's cavalry, suddenly it seems like we're going to shore up that centre and be just about okay. So with everyone piling into that fight, things seem good, but on the left flank we now once again have a situation. The holy men have managed to get themselves into melee with my grenadiers, and they're doing fairly well. Not as well as they would do against a regular line infantry unit, of course, so that's some consolation, but we are going to slightly struggle to hold them off. We really need to deal with this left flank reinforcement scenario to try and help them out, but you can see the enemy flooding the area with dervishes and my infantry just fleeing before their elephant charges as well. Probably a wise move from them. So it seems like the enemy are going to have nice chances to outflank us here. We need to start bringing units over from elsewhere on the battlefield before that gets too bad. The cavalry, of course, could help. Right now, they're actually having yet another charge against those grenadiers who came back from routing after losing most of their men, so they are going to be taken out. They didn't really perform very well in this battle, so nice to take out that high-end unit. So the elephants now started to threaten this grenadier unit, which has actually beaten off the holy men now and formed up to receive the elephants, but you can see I'm telling them to just get out of the way. We're not going to bother fighting the elephants in melee. What I can do though is have my artillery in the background there fire onto the broadside of those elephants, and it's actually bringing them down, as you can see. So not many elephants actually left. This is a pretty handy move. If the elephants saw the artillery and attacked them, that could be dangerous, but they're focused on chasing those grenadiers. Eventually you can see I'm not paying enough attention, and they actually do attack the grenadiers in the rear, but with most of the elephants dead, it doesn't do all that much damage. In the center, things are sort of cleaned up. The enemy's melee attacks have been pushed away, and now line battling is resuming with enemy units out here in the distance. So we actually now have the advantage in terms of numbers of line infantry, and I can even start outflanking the enemy here on the right. So things starting to go our way in general now. Those elephants who were just marauding along our centre, taking more artillery fire, which is damaging our own men as well. So this is very deadly. I wasn't actually paying attention, it seems, but the elephants, as you can see, going down to those artillery hits. And now our men forming up once again on the wall to form a solid centre, with the enemy's units now starting to break here on the left as well, because all of my cavalry came over and started just rampaging through. Another attrition-heavy engagement where we lost a lot of men, but those dervishes in particular weak against cavalry attacks. So we were able to turn away all of those troops, and in the end it was just their remaining line infantry units with low morale since all of their comrades were dead. So a lancer charge was able to finish them off without having to actually kill too many of them. So they get out of there, and that brings the battle to an end. A very bloody engagement. We lost nearly half of our entire army holding off the enemy there, which was not what we wanted, because we now know the enemy have at least 1.5 more stacks who they could employ right away. Some very large numbers of kills on our units. Our line infantry always going man for man. We didn't really take any losses where we didn't kill the enemy as well, so that was good at least. And the company cavalry at the top there doing very well indeed. So the enemy have been defeated, but will it be enough? Finally, give me that. You'd think we'd gone and invaded Japan, given how hard it is to get news back from them. What is this? Saying he's engaged and defeated the enemy, but also that he requests an additional army be sent at once. What's that about? Christian, I need someone from the intelligence committee in my office at once. Tell them it's about the fact Mysore have double the strength that they estimated, and as a direct result our expedition is tanking. Someone needs to pay for this mess up, and it sure as hell is not going to be me. Meantime, requisition orders, where are they? Alright, okay, let's just open it up, recruit everyone with half a brain. We need another army pronto. Something tells me there's no point replying to Costa. So that's our victory, the enemy losing way more than us, but of course that doesn't matter to them because they have way more than us, and right away that half stack from outside the city comes down to engage us. It has an advantage still despite its small size because our army was so battered in that previous engagement, so we're going to have to fight this one as well. We're going right back into battle. They've brought some mortars, some swordsmen and some horse archers. Overall a less powerful force than before that is less versatile, so I'm hoping we'll be able to win. On my right flank I've got some hidden Indian lancers concealed next to my artillery, acting as bait there, effectively right on the edge of the map. We've got some half-dead infantry guarding those artillery, and then the main line going right across the centre of the field, with company cavalry positioned here on the left in the open, hoping to find a chance to go and outflank the enemy once they get closer. Now, since the enemy brought mortars, you know what that means. They have dropped their mortar pieces. They have drawn out these gigantic swords, and they're going to have a go at it. So as the rest of their army is still forming up, these guys did not get the memo about what's going on today. They're going right in for the action as usual, and unfortunately for them, that means we're going to have an early bit of target practice to get my men warmed up before the battle. And of course the enemy get mostly killed, turning around quite rapidly as they realise they've made a terrible mistake, but unfortunately many of them will still be punished as they are shot down attempting to escape. So that's that part of the battle over with. Next up, we just wait for the enemy to come up with their formation and then advance towards us, since we are the defender, and we might as well wait since we're hitting them with artillery the whole time. Eventually they get close and they sent out a unit of light cav to advance towards us. Unfortunately, they're making the classic AI cav mistake of running it across the front of the line, the absolute worst thing you can do with a cavalry unit, so they're getting shot to pieces by pretty much all of my units, and they are just about going to reach their target right on the end here of the line, but luckily I was able to form a square in time to receive that charge, and they actually just rout once they get into the action, realizing that they have wasted their strength. So away they go, but the rest of their army now coming in very much on my right flank, so my bait artillery is actually now getting out of the way because I realized I'm not going to be able to stage an ambush big enough to stop their entire army from just overrunning the artillery, so they need to get out of there. Those swordsmen there looking very menacing as they advance towards them. So they came in for an attack against the line now, bringing in lots of horse archers to rain arrows upon my line. Not going to be massively effective, but will inflict casualties. Hopefully I'll kill more of them with return fire, but their lancers are going to be able to get in and smash into my lines. Luckily the forest and the fact my men are quite quick on the triggers are able to stop many of them from reaching the line with full charge, but they are going to be doing big damage. Now here their swordsmen coming around my right flank. I decided to just charge them with my ambush lancers. This isn't really a terribly good idea, but there's not exactly anything else I can do to stop those swordsmen right now, so I'm really sacrificing the lancers to distract them while the rest of the fight goes on here. So in the centre, it's an open melee as the enemy are just pouring all of their ranged infantry into melee for whatever reason. So we're under a lot of pressure, but further down the line, units still firing and provide lots of support. This enemy cavalry unit just sort of goes right through my men, through my grenadiers even, and reaches Costa, so he's now going to have to fight in melee. He's drawn into combat with that horse archer unit. Luckily, they're probably inferior melee stat wise, so he won't be doing too badly there. We've also got them totally outflanked here on the left. They're not putting much pressure on our left echelon, so we're going to keep firing on the enemy, and that's going to cause them to rout relatively easily. Now my company cavalry from the left flank have gone on an expedition to find the enemy's general, who was for some reason really far behind their army. It was just a low quality ranged unit, so I went in to just fight in melee with the hope of just killing them off. We didn't get a charge because of all the buildings around here. It really obstructed the pathfinding, but we are hopefully just going to beat them in a regular melee and very rapidly see the enemy general dies. So on the front line, the enemy is looking like they have an advantage on this part of the line, just with their sheer numbers pushing through my men. There goes their general. And over here, where their swordsmen were fighting, my 25 musketmen have been drawn into combat. That's not really going to help. We've killed a lot of the swordsmen, but my lancers now starting to die quite rapidly as well. So both sides taking losses. I think the enemy probably are getting a more cost-efficient engagement here with just one unit distracting 2 units of charge-heavy cavalry. I need to go in and micro them properly, but right now I'm busy microing other things. You can see we're sort of winning out here on the centre and the left, so I'm now starting to come around to try and support this situation on the centre right, where it looks like the enemy are about to completely obliterate our line. The last few men fighting on there, but it's not going to be enough to stop the enemy's superior numbers. So behind them, I've just got the units that I don't really want to engage at all, these cuirassiers and the artillery, and the enemy are going to get into combat with them, so that's not nice. However, once the cuirassiers actually start fighting the enemy, they decide, you know what, we are not going to bother, and it actually triggers a chain rout. All of their forces around here start leaving the battlefield, and this is fantastic news because all the men I just brought in as reinforcements from the other parts of the line will now join a pursuit, and this is going to allow us to actually destroy the majority of their remaining forces all at once. Take that, you little devil, you. That was certainly a nice bit of fighting, eh, lads? Anything for another go at those bounders. But alas, this glory is not all for us. Let the rest of the men get up front for now. I could use the rest anyway. Not that one needs energy to beat these latrine rats. Now, where's my flask? Oh, no, I had it right here. Men, listen up. Can I have a moment of your time? I seem to have dropped my beautiful flask in the fighting, so if any of you should happen upon it, I would be most grateful. And don't you bother trying to drink what's in it. It takes a certain kind of stomach to handle my bespoke liqueur. It's quite important that I get it back for medical reasons, you see. Just get me that flask. So it's time to finish this battle. All that was left was those swordsmen who I finally disengaged from with the lancers. So now it was up to a few local units to try and shoot them. Unfortunately, we took massive friendly fire. There's actually a unit there in the background trying to fire at my guys, with another one of my units in the foreground getting shot in the back. So that was a little nasty piece to end the battle. But the rest of the enemy's army routing all over the place by cavalry, making sure routing units can't come back, and as a result the battle comes to an end. So the result itself pretty good, losing 700 to kill 2,800 with all the units that took massive losses, certainly making the enemy pay for those losses. No absolute whitewashes, but again it's a case that although we've won a pretty decent victory, the losses are adding up and the enemy still have so many forces left that I'm pretty worried. Those company cavalry, they're doing very well at the top, losing only 6 for 252 kills. So there's that result again. We're getting pretty damn weak now, to be honest. We're at about a third of our original invasion strength, and the enemy come in with another stack. Of course they did. It was very generous of them to not attack with all their stacks at once. The fact they came out in waves is probably helping us out a fair bit here, but now they've finally got us overwhelmed. With the losses taken from that battle, we are not able to face up to another one. Luckily though, I can retreat into Portuguese territory. I'm allied to them, and Mysore, who don't have access to Portuguese lands, are forced to retreat, so that's actually pretty nice. Now looking at Morocco, who we're now at war with, you can see they have got some pretty serious forces right here. They're all irregulars, but there's just loads of them, easily enough to overcome Gibraltar if they want. In Madrid, I've got quite a lot of militia and a small amount of professional troops, and I'm going to start getting more. My basic plan here is going to be to just give ground, let the enemy take Gibraltar if they want, and try and buy time to put together a really quick professional army in Madrid to try and resist them once they get up there. Now on the Ottoman front, I'm using this rake to spy out Istanbul, the Ottoman capital and the choke point to the rest of their empire. I'm going to have to take it if I want to invade by land the rest of the Ottoman territory. You can see the Ottomans appear to be piling units into Istanbul, some of them just queuing up to get in. Luckily for me though, with Gaiden now on this scene, we're able to move out of Athens and pull him around to start potentially getting involved. So the combined forces of Voss and Gaiden shouldn't have too much trouble taking Istanbul, even if it's heavily defended and even though it has a gigantic garrison. I considered taking out this Ottoman port to deny them trade income, but I realised that since I'm actually raiding that trade, I might as well let it keep going because it's actually making me loads of money, so that's fair enough. So we are going to move up. We can't get anywhere near Istanbul this turn, but we're just setting up for next turn really. So we should be able to team up with Voss and both reach Istanbul if we're lucky. So now in India, I'm going to be very quickly recruiting new forces in Ceylon because it's clear our armies need to be more powerful. And for Costa's force, I'm just going to pay a massive amount to replenish it. Seems a little bit cheesy that I can just get all of my forces back using this replenishment mechanic, but we are going to use it. And what I'm also going to do is go and stand in the Portuguese zone of control just to absolutely ensure that Mysore can't reach me. They'll have to declare war on Portugal if they want to, and Portugal, as you can see, have 1 3/4 stacks there. So we would be in a very nice position if that was to occur. So I should be safe to just now wait for more reinforcements. As we move on, the Moroccans do make the move that I thought they may. They go and storm Gibraltar, crossing over the straits, facing only a small force from my side, 2 units of militia, 2 units of line infantry. Not going to be enough to stop this 1.5 stack army coming in. So we're just going to auto-resolve that, and of course we lose. So Gibraltar is lost, and now they make another annoying move. These 2 ships come all the way up to the channel and start blockading one of the French trade ports, and that's really annoying. Less annoying than if they'd besieged Amsterdam. That would have been worse, but still going to cost me thousands per turn, so we need to try and do something about that. Now I realise that with this Moroccan threat, one action I can take to deal with it is to actually bring Nassau over to come and invade Morocco. There's nothing for him to do right now in America, so it looks like the West India Company is going to swoop in to save Europe in its time of need. Going to really be hammering home our strength with the West India Company. Spot the British fleet there as I come across, linking Nassau up there with Calimber's fleet. So it's the 2 old men of the West India Company, the men who went out to make it great and succeeded, now coming home with their powerful forces to try and change the tide of that war with Morocco. So that's going to be very useful for us. We're also going to need to try and take out their blockading fleet up in the north there, since they are going to be taking a lot of our money every turn. I'm going to keep recruiting more and more forces in Madrid as well though, just in case the enemy attack, because they could attack right away. For example, it'll take a couple of turns for me to get supporting forces ready from Nassau. So we'll just spam units there and see what happens. I'm going to have to move Ismail Mande around with the main fleet to go and hunt down that Moroccan blockade means I stopped raiding the Ottoman trade, which is unfortunate, although I did send a unit of cavalry to go and ruin their docks, so the Ottomans aren't making anything off it anymore either. So now it was time to move out onto Istanbul. Unfortunately, it was a bit of an anticlimax because we were only able to walk right up next to Istanbul. We were just short of the movement points needed to actually start an assault, which would have been nice, but of course, next time we will be in a position to take it, although the enemy may reinforce with more units in that time, so it'll make it harder, but we'll see how it goes in the next episode. An unexpected consequence of the invasion of Mysore was the invocation of a nearly forgotten pact with the little-known territory of Dagestan. Hidden away from view by their own obscurity, Dagestan had arranged protective alliance deals between various other low-prestige powers, making themselves the arbiter of when and how those deals should be called upon. In this case, the Dutch were surprised to learn that Morocco was called upon to defend the honour of Mysore with an invasion of the Iberian Peninsula. With no warning of the attack, Gibraltar fell almost at once, with much more of Spain under threat. What Dagestan truly hoped to achieve with their scheme is unknown, but it was disruptive to say the least. Thanks for watching. We'll see what we can do in our many conflicts in the next episode of Sinews of War.